So today we'll be starting the next part of your syllabus, that is TCR, CD3 complex and T cell development. For the first part, today we'll be doing the T cell receptor and the CD3 complex and the signaling part. So let's look into the T cell. Since we have done a brief on immunology and we have done the cells, tissues of the immune system, so you people are now by now aware of the lymphocytes and the basic receptors this lymphocytes express. So this is a typical T cell. And when you talk about T cell, the important receptors of a T cell are the T cell receptor itself. Apart from that, the T cell receptor has two co-receptors, the CD8 and the CD4. To keep in mind that both the receptors are not present on the same T lymphocyte. CD8 is present as a co-receptor on the surface of the T cytotoxic cells, while CD4 is present as a co-receptor on the surface of T helper cells. But the T cell receptor is common for all category of T lymphocytes. Apart from that, there are some more important receptors that play a role in lymphocyte signaling. One that includes the CD28 receptor, which binds to CD80, 86 in the antigen presenting cells. And another important receptors are the CD45 receptors that helps in naive T cells. CD45 is present in memory T cell as well as naive T cell. They play a big role in signal transduction. And there is another important receptor of T cell, that is the CD2 receptor that helps in adhesion, acts as an adhesion molecule. So these are the various receptors on the surface of T cell, but we'll restrict ourselves to So as I was saying, now the T cell receptor, your syllabus is restricted to the T cell receptor and the associated CD3 molecule. So as I was talking, that this is the T cell receptor and this is the CD3 molecule. Now let's look into some more details in this particular picture about in this receptor. If you think of a T cell receptor, receptor is nothing but a polypeptide chain present on the surface of the T lymphocytes. This polypeptide chain can be of two types. Because you have done already MAC class molecules, you have this basic idea that these receptors are nothing but polypeptide chains. Now the polypeptide chains can be of the alpha type or the beta type, or they can be of the gamma type or the delta type. So when we are talking about the T cell receptors, we have to keep it in mind that there are two sets of polypeptide chain which can form a T cell receptor. One set is the alpha and the beta polypeptide forming the alpha beta T cell receptor. So as you can see, this picture is the alpha beta T cell receptor. And the other set consists of the polypeptide gamma and delta, which consists of the gamma delta receptor. So at the outset only, we have to keep it in mind that the T cell receptor can be basically of two types, the alpha beta T cell receptor or the gamma delta T cell receptor. If you look into the picture of this particular two circles which I've drawn on the screen, you can see that each receptor has an extracellular part. Apart from that, there is a transmembrane domain. And again, as you can see, that there is a cytoplasmic domain. So each receptor has three basic parts, an extracellular part, a transmembrane domain, and a cytoplasmic tail. But the cytoplasmic tail, in case of the T cell receptor, is very small. This picture also shows the number of amino acids present in the different domains. When we are talking about the extracellular domains, you can see there are two. This category of domains are known as immunoglobulin-like domains. So there are two immunoglobulin-like domains. One is known as the variable region, the other is known as the constant region. There is a transmembrane and then we have a cytosolic small tail. The variable immunoglobulin-like domain contains 102 to 109 amino acids. The constant region Ig-like domain is made up of 83 to 113 amino acids. And the transmembrane domain consists of 18 to 24 amino acids, and the small cytoplasmic domain consists of 4 to 12 amino acids. But this is with respect to the alpha beta T cell receptor. When we are talking about the gamma delta T cell receptor, there are three subtypes as shown here. We restrict just a concept to this typical gamma delta receptor. It has a gamma chain and a delta chain. The lower panel shows the similarity of the T cell receptor in structure to MHC class 1, class 2 molecule and the immunoglobulin molecule. You can see that if you look into the structure, you can see the presence of disulfide bonds in the T cell receptor, as was obvious in MHC class 1 and 2 molecules and present in the basic immunoglobulin structure. You can also compare the T cell receptor and the immunoglobulin, and you can see that in an immunoglobulin, the foremost part is the variable region, and thereafter the constant region starts. So the variable region is a region which binds to the antigen. Same thing, the T cell receptor also has a variable region and a constant region. And it is this variable region that recognizes antigen, which is complexed with either MHC class 1 molecule or MHC class 2 molecule. This is a similarity showing you how the structures of the different immune receptors are similar and belong to the family known as immunoglobulin superfamily. So if you look into an immunoglobulin, you see this folds, presence of this disulfide folds forms a definite domain. So these are this immunoglobulin-like domain. Now, if you compare a T cell receptor, you see the similarity between an immunoglobulin and a T cell receptor. So these structures usually fall under the T cell receptor, the MHC proteins, the CD4 co-receptor, the CD8 co-receptor, the CD28 co-receptor, the B7 co-stimulatory proteins. They all in general fall under this immunoglobulin superfamily. Our topic for today is the T cell receptor and the associated CD3 complex, as you can see. So when we are talking about the T cell receptor and the associated CD3 complex, look at the similarity of the structure. So you can see the presence of immunoglobulin-like domains in the CD3 molecules also. This is the CD8 molecule, the presence of immunoglobulin-like domains in the CD8 molecule, and the presence of Ig-like domains in the CD4 molecule. This is a very simplified diagram showing you the basic characteristic of an alpha beta and a gamma delta chain. If you look into the TCR alpha beta, as you can see, it is found in almost more than 90% of T lymphocytes. TCR gamma delta is found in only 10% of the T lymphocytes. The lymphocytes in which TCR alpha beta is found are distributed in the secondary lymphoid tissue. These cells where the gamma delta chain is found in the intraepithelial tissues. The TCR alpha beta can recognize antigen when they're complexed with MHC molecules. TCR gamma delta can recognize processed or unprocessed ligand. So this is a variant category from the traditional T cell receptor. Now coming to the detailed discussion on the T cell receptor. As I started my class saying that there are two types of T cell receptor, both of which are heterodimers. That is, dimers made up of two different polypeptides. So one is the alpha chain and one is the beta chain for TCR alpha beta receptor. And for the gamma delta one, one was the gamma chain and the other was the delta chain. Now the majority of T cell bears the alpha beta heterodimers, which binds to ligands made up of an antigenic peptide present in complex with type 1 or type 2 MHC molecule. When we we talk about the gamma delta receptors, the T cells bearing gamma delta receptors have particular localization patterns. They are often found in mucosal tissue, and some gamma delta T cells recognize different types of antigen from that recognized by the alpha beta T cells. In the earlier picture, I showed that the TCR proteins are members of the immunoglobulin superfamily of proteins. Therefore, the domain structures, so these are the domain structures of alpha, beta, and gamma delta T cell receptors are strikingly similar to those of the immunoglobulins. Now coming to the alpha beta T cell, the alpha chain. The alpha chain has a molecular weight of 40 to 50 kDa, and the beta chain has a molecular weight of 40 to 45 kilodalton. The TCR alpha beta receptor, if you look into the structure of this receptor, you can see that the TCR chains has two immunoglobulin-like domains, which contains an intra-chain disulfide bonds spanning of around 60 to 75 amino acids. The amino terminal of the domain, if you look into the amino terminal of the domain, they exhibit marked sequence variation, but the remainder of the structure remains conserved. So the upper portion is known as the variable and the lower portion is known as the constant region. In the variable region, so the amino terminal, as I showed you in an earlier picture, is a variable region. Now in the variable domain, the chain further exhibits further variation, and it has been seen that in the variable domain, there are around 3 hypervariable regions. Now this 3 hypervariable region means that within the variable region, there are 3 areas in which the sequences fluctuates a bit more. And they are equivalent to the, I hope you have studied immunoglobulins. So these hypervariable regions are similar to the complementary determining regions present in the immunoglobulin light and heavy chain. In case of TCR beta, this is alpha, this is beta. So both of them have this variable region, and within the variable region, there are 3 hypervariable regions, the region where the sequences vary a bit more. Now, in case of TCR beta, it has been seen that there is a 4th hypervariable region on the TCR beta chain. However, it does not has any functional significance when it comes to antigen recognition. So that was about the variable and the constant region of the T cell receptors. Now we move on to the C-terminal end of the T cell receptors. As you can see, at the C-terminal end of the constant domain, each TCR contains a short connecting sequence in which, so this is the short connecting sequence in which a cysteine residue forms a disulfide link with the other chain of the heterodimer. And then we have this small transmembrane domain containing about 21 to 22 amino acids, which keeps the receptors anchored to the plasma membrane. Interestingly, you see that this structure shows plus sign. That means the amino acids present in this transmembrane domain are positively charged. Since they are positively charged, it can be assumed that the amino acids present here can interact with other negatively charged amino acids present in the plasma membrane. Finally, you can see that there is a very small short cytoplasmic tail. From this basic structure, one thing that can be understood is that when an antigen comes and TCR recognizes the antigen peptide complex, automatically the T cell will be activated. And we all know that at the cytoplasmic end, what happens is that once the receptor is activated, signaling process starts downstream in the cytoplasmic end. But the drawback of the TCR alpha beta receptor as you can see from this picture, is that there is not much of the cytoplasmic portion found in the alpha beta chain. So automatically the question arises that if the receptor is activated, how come the signal moves downstream into the cell? So to satisfy this question, comes the next part of the TCR, that is the CD3 complex. What happens? The T cell receptor is not present alone in the cell. The T cell receptor is associated with a group of transmembrane domains, a group of, not transmembrane domains, a group of complex of proteins collectively referred to as CD3. So this and this together make the CD3 complex. As you can see, the CD3 is made up of 3 dimers. One is the gamma epsilon chain, the other is the epsilon delta chain, and the third is the zeta zeta chain. So we have a delta epsilon dimer pair, we have a gamma epsilon dimer pair, we have a delta epsilon dimer pair, and the finally is the 2 zeta molecules. Sometimes there is this zeta eta heterodimer present also, but this structure has not been shown in the figure. Now, when we were discussing the structure of the TCR molecules, what did we realize? That in the transmembrane domain, there are certain positively charged amino acids. When we look into the structure of the CD3 molecules, you can see that there is a extracellular small region, there is a transmembrane domain, and on the cytoplasmic part, we are having some tails. And this tails contains these blue blocks. So these blue blocks are now important. So the question was that once TCR recognizes and peptide amino complexes, the TCR is activated. And once they are activated, these are positively charged amino acids which start interacting with the negatively charged amino acids of the CD3 molecules. Remember, whenever a T cell receptor recognizes a peptide amino complex, clustering of the receptors occur. So the T cell receptor and the CD3 molecules tend to cluster together. The moment they cluster together, the positively charged amino acids can interact with the negatively charged amino acids. So the signal is passed on to the transmembrane domain of the CD3 heterodimers or the homodimers. And once the CD3 perceive the signal, downstream, as you can see, there are some blue blocks present on these CD3 molecules. These are known as intrinsic tyrosine activation motifs. So the CD3 cytoplasmic tails are studded with these ITAM sequences that serve as docking sites for adapter proteins following activation-induced tyrosine phosphorylation. So the moment signaling starts, the positively charged amino acid sends the message to this negatively charged amino acids, and the tyrosine residues in this cytoplasmic tails of the CD3 molecules are phosphorylated on their tyrosines, and they now then start recruiting other signal transducers so that the signaling cascade can proceed downstream from the cytoplasm into the nucleus. So that is how, even though the TCR alpha beta chain do not have any cytoplasmic end, but the signal from the TCR alpha beta is perceived by the negatively charged amino acids of the transmembrane region of the CD3 molecules, as a result of which the ITAMs present on the blue ones are the ITAMs present on the cytoplasmic tail of the CD3 molecules are activated. They in turn activate other signal transducers of the cytoplasm. Once more, the full form of ITAM is intrinsic tyrosine activation motif. So this was about the T cell receptor and the CD3 complex. But since we have studied MHC, you might have realized by now the TCR, the CD3 complex do not functions alone. They have another molecule that plays as a vital recognizing molecule of the MHC receptor. Let me go back to this picture, that picture is just a second. See, so whenever there is an antigen presenting cell, the antigen presenting cell may present the peptide complexed with MHC class 2 or may present the peptide complexed with MHC class 1. And in this structure, you can see the TCR is recognizing the antigen. So the TCR is activated. And once the TCR is activated, it starts sending signals via its positively charged amino acids in the transmembrane region to the CD3 molecules who are having negatively charged amino acids in their transmembrane. So this positive negative amino acid interaction is occurring. And finally, what we are seeing is that the CD3 molecules are being activated. And once the CD3 molecules are being activated, you can see the signaling cascade is starting downstream, resulting in the T cell activation. So that is one part of the story. The other part is that whenever an antigen presenting cell binds with the T cell receptor, the question is that the T helper has to recognize the class 2 molecule and the T cytotoxic cell has to recognize the class 1 molecule. So for recognizing this class 1 and class 2 molecule, we have this CD4 receptor or the CD8 receptor. So as you can see by this structure that the CD4 molecule is recognizing the T cell receptor, the CD8 molecule, is recognizing the MHC class 2 molecule, and the CD8 is recognizing the MHC class 1 molecule. So the presence of these two co-receptors becomes very important when the question of antigen recognition is occurring. Now, the T cell receptor is non-covalently associated, as you can see by the picture, with a number of accessory molecules. The only two such molecules that are capable of recognizing MHC peptide antigen, as shown in the picture, is the CD4 and CD8. When we talk about the CD4 positive T cells, that is the T lymphocytes having CD4 as a co-receptor. Now look at the CD4 molecule. These CD4 molecules recognize antigen combined with class 2 MHC and functions primarily as a helper or regulatory T cell. Look at the structure of a CD4. CD4 is a 55 kilodalton monomeric membrane glycoprotein that contains 4 extracellular immunoglobulin-like domains D1, D2, D3, D4, and a hydrophobic transmembrane region and a long cytoplasmic tail containing 3 serine residues that can be phosphorylated. So the CD4 signaling can be done through CD4 itself. When we look at the CD8 receptor present on the T lymphocytes, they recognize the antigen complexed with MHC class 1. CD8 takes the form of a disulfide link alpha beta heterodimer or homodimer. That means the original T cell receptor is alpha beta heterodimer. So you can see the CD8 shows very similarity in structure with the original alpha beta T cell receptor. Both the alpha and the beta chains of CD8 are small glycoproteins of about 30 to 38 kilodalton. Each chain, as you can see, contains a single extracellular immunoglobulin-like domain, a long stalk, a hydrophobic transmembrane region, and a cytoplasmic, just a second. A hydrophobic transmembrane region and a cytoplasmic tail containing 25 to 27 residues, several of which can be phosphorylated. So this is the basics of those receptors that play an pivotal role in recognizing the peptide MHC complex. However, to keep it in mind that whenever the T cell receptor, as you can see once more in this picture, whenever the T cell receptor recognizes the MHC class 2 molecule, the CD4 needs to peptide present with the MHC class molecule. The CD4 also simultaneously needs to recognize the MHC class 2 molecule. And the signaling then starts downstream via CD3. Same, whenever the T cell receptor recognizes the peptide complexed with class 1 molecule, the CD8 simultaneously needs to recognize the class 1 molecules. But this signaling alone is not enough for the complete activation of T lymphocytes. This is enough for the initial activation of T lymphocytes. For the complete activation of T lymphocytes, if you look into this particular complete structure, I'm drawing this one. So there is this TCR CD3 combining with MHC class 2. And there is this TCR CD3 combining with MHC class 1. Class 1 and class 2 molecules are recognized by CD8 and CD4 respectively. So that is the first signal for activation. But for complete activation, there is a second set of receptor pair that needs to react with its corresponding ligand so that the T lymphocytes are completely activated. The second set of receptor that have ticked in the picture is CD28. The CD28 present on both CD4 T cells and CD8 positive T cells react with the CD80 or 86 receptor present on the antigen presenting cells. It is only when this is signal 1 and this is signal 2. It is only when these two signals are simultaneously perceived one after the other. Signal 1 is occurring first. TCR binds with the peptide MHC complex. TCR activates CD3. Simultaneously CD4 or CD8 activated. So this is signal 1. Then this is partial activation of the T lymphocytes. After this has occurred, the T lymphocytes also need to interact via their CD28 receptor with the CD80-86 molecule, that is signal 2. Only when signal 1 and signal 2 have been completed, then only can a full activation of T lymphocyte be possible. So that was about the TCR CD3 complex and the CD4 CD8 co-receptor. Now, since we have studied the TCR CD3 complex, now we'll be moving on to the basic signaling mechanism which occurs when the TCR CD3 complex is activated. Keep it in mind that when we are talking about the TCR receptor, the TCR alone is not self-sufficient. The TCR does not have its independent existence, because the TCR do not have any cytoplasmic region which can transduce the signal. So the TCR is always present in complex with TCR CD3 receptor complex. They act as a partner. And this is a partner set that acts together. Initially, even though the antigen is being recognized by the T cell receptors, the signal is being percolated from the T cell receptors to the CD3 molecules, which then activate the downstream items, and thus the signaling cascade follows downstream. So the T cell receptor and CD3 act together, bringing about the initial activation of T lymphocytes. The TCR CD3 complex is facilitated by CD4 co-receptor in case of T helper cells or CD8 co-receptors in case of T cytotoxic cells. So remember this picture. So this is the picture that actually gives us a brief idea about how the initial activation of T lymphocyte is occurring. The T cell receptor is recognizing the antigen. The signals are being perceived and transmitted to the CD3 molecules. The CD3 molecules are then starting the downstream signaling cascade. The CD4 molecule present here is recognizing the MHC class 2 molecule. So this whole set acts as a complex mechanism. The existence of an individual T cell receptor does not is not present when the initial activation is occurring. T cell receptor is a part of the complex that is helping in initial activation of the lymphocyte. So whenever a lymphocyte is being activated, this is the complex that is taking part initially, resulting in the initial activation of T lymphocyte. T cell receptor alone cannot bring about the activation of a T lymphocyte. So if we are thorough with this fact, then let's move on to the signaling part. The signaling part, this is a beautiful picture, and I just wanted to show you this picture. We have done MHC class, major histocompatibility class 1 and 2 molecules. We have studied them, and we have also studied that antigens are processed and presented via MHC class 1 molecule or MHC class 2 molecule. Now, this is an antigen presenting cell. So let us assume that the antigen presenting cell is presenting its antigens via the MHC class 2 molecule. The moment the antigen presenting cells are displaying the antigens via the MHC class 2 molecules, what happens? And the antigen presenting cells are simultaneously secreting cytokines. These cytokines, these are chemical messengers of the immune system, starts attracting these T lymphocytes towards the antigen presenting cell. And as you can see, the T lymphocytes starts moving towards the antigen presenting cell, and finally the T lymphocytes then recognize the T cell receptor of the T lymphocytes, recognizes the peptide complexed with MHC class 2, the CD4 receptor of the T lymphocytes recognize that this is MHC class 2, and once the peptide has been recognized by the T cell receptor, next what happens? The signals are perceived by the CD3 molecules. The CD3 molecules are activated and the signaling cascade starts downstream. So at the surface level, this interaction is happening between the T cell receptor and the peptide MHC class 2 complex. If I look into the signaling cascade operative in the T lymphocytes, the moment it recognizes the peptide MHC complex, look at this one. This is the T cell receptor CD3 complex, T cell receptor CD3 and CD4 complex. Let us assume that this pink color is an antigen presenting cell and it is displaying antigen complex with MHC class 2. The moment it is displaying antigen with MHC class 2, CD4 recognizes the MHC class 2. The T cell receptor alpha beta chain recognizes the antigen and thereby sends the signal via their transmembrane domain to the different CD3 complexes. So, and there is another receptor CD45 that plays a role in signaling. For now, as you can see, so the TCR CD3 complex is activated, and you can see that downstream signaling, CD3 molecule starts this downstream signaling. A lot of signaling pathways, some signaling pathways you have studied the JAK-STAT pathway and you have studied the receptor RTK pathway. So CD3 molecules are nothing but they have this tyrosine activation motifs. So downstream receptor signaling starts. Then what do we have? Immediately after the T cell gene activation, some genes are activated immediately within half an hour of antigen recognition. These genes include the C-FOS, C-MYC, C-Jun, nuclear factor 80, and nuclear factor kappa B. So they are these immediate genes that they are activated within half an hour of the interaction of the T lymphocyte with the antigen presenting cells. Next comes the early set of genes. These early genes are expressed within 2 hours. So once these immediate genes are activated, most of these genes are nuclear factors, they are transcription factors. They then go and activate a set of genes which will now produce different cytokines. So next, the early genes are expressed within 2 hours. that encodes cytokines like IL-2, interleukin-2, interleukin-2 receptor, interleukin-3, interleukin-6. These cytokines are liberated. And the cytokines that are liberated are also capable of binding with the receptor being expressed by the same cell. So there is an autocrine loop. And finally, late genes are expressed within more than, it takes time for the expression of late genes, around 2 days are needed, which encodes various adhesion molecules. This is a rough signaling scheme, but we will restrict ourselves. We will not go into the details of this extreme signaling scheme that is occurring within the lymphocytes. For your knowledge, for your syllabus, we restrict ourselves to the signaling cascade operative here. To keep it in mind, I just now said that this is signal 1. MHC antigen recognition by the CD4 TCR CD3 complex. This was signal 2, which occurs via the CD80-86, CD28, CTLA4 complex. Finally, for the complete and the useful and proliferation of T lymphocytes, a third signal is also required. The third signal is this one. So you can understand signal 1 is partial activation of T lymphocyte. Signal 2 is complete activation of T lymphocytes. So that particular T lymphocyte has been activated. But now the message needs to be sent to different T lymphocytes. The T lymphocytes needs to proliferate. Immune activation needs to occur properly. So for that reason, a third signal is also required. And this is the third signal. Third signal can only take place after the first and the second signal has been completed. Once the first and the second signal has been completed, they result in the production of certain immediate genes. These immediate genes result in the production of the products of the early genes. Only when the early genes are expressed, interleukin-2 is expressed, and once interleukin-2 is expressed, the third signal on T lymphocytes can be activated. Once the third signal is activated, it activates additional signaling cascades, as you can see, additional signaling cascades have started, and T lymphocyte proliferation, development of memory T cells, and so on starts occurring. Now, for our knowledge, we will restrict ourselves to the signal 1 and signal 2. Now, if you look into this picture, hopefully this picture is being shown, you can see this is the CD4 receptor. And there is a family of SRC family of tyrosine kinase, LCK. The LCK protein is found, it's a tyrosine kinase. Keep it in mind, this is a recapitulation of what you have done in SEM 2. Whenever there is a kinase enzyme, it adds phosphate to its substrate, thereby activating the substrate. Removal of the phosphate is done by another enzyme which is known as phosphatase. So you should be very clear about what a kinase enzyme does. Remember, these are all enzymes, and these enzymes can phosphorylate their substrate. When we talk about tyrosine kinase, remember that this enzyme will phosphorylate its substrate, which is a protein, on a particular amino acid that is a tyrosine. All proteins are made up of polypeptides, and tyrosine is one important amino acid. So whenever I'm saying that this is a tyrosine kinase, you have to keep it in mind that this enzyme will phosphorylate its substrate, which is again a protein, and it will phosphorylate, it will add phosphate to the tyrosine amino acid of its substrate. So that is how this addition of phosphates takes place. So as I'll start telling you the story, that we start with CD4, and you can see that there is this LCK, which is a tyrosine kinase, which is associated with the CD4 or the CD8 receptor. In this particular picture, they have shown the CD4 molecule. The moment the TCR CD3 complex binds with the peptide MHC complex and is activated, what happens? This antigen-induced clustering, I said that they cluster together. So this antigen-induced clustering brings this co-receptor, CD4 co-receptor, into the vicinity of the TCR CD3 molecules. And as a result of which, there is an inhibitory phosphate present on LCK. So the tyrosine phosphatase CD45 removes this inhibitory phosphate from LCK. Once more, LCK is present associated with CD4 co-receptor. Once antigen clustering is occurring, the CD45 phosphatase removes the inhibitory phosphate from LCK. The moment the inhibitory phosphate from LCK is removed, LCK in turn starts phosphorylating all those tyrosine residues present on the CD3 receptors. If you remember, when I discussed the structure of CD3, I said that the cytoplasmic end of CD3 has these blue blocks, which was named as intrinsic tyrosine activation motifs. That means there are tyrosine residues present here. So the moment LCK is activated, LCK in turn, you can see it is phosphorylating all the tyrosine residues present on the CD3 molecules. Once the CD3 items are phosphorylated, then a second tyrosine kinase comes and associates with this phosphates. So a second tyrosine kinase, ZAP70, is brought and it complexes with this structure. Next, what happens is that, so we have a signaling link, LCK phosphorylase items of CD3. CD3 is phosphorylating ZAP70. Meanwhile, there is this large adapter protein known as LAT, linker protein with activated T cells. It is a transmembrane protein associated with lipid rafts. Just a second. I was saying that once the phosphorylation of the CD3 items occurs and ZAP is phosphorylated, next comes important adapter molecule, one of the earliest adapter molecules in the T cell signaling is this linker protein activated. Happen just a second. LAT, it is a linker protein of activated T cell. This is a transmembrane associated protein with lipid rafts in the plasma membrane. Now, as you can see, this is an adapter molecule so that a number of further signaling molecules can come and associate with this LAT. The moment ZAP70 phosphorylates LAT at multiple points, you can see at multiple points the LAT is phosphorylated. Several important enzymes, like you've heard of these enzymes, PLC gamma, then the adapter protein GAD comes and binds to it. The adapter protein SLP76 comes and binds to it. So these adapter proteins comes and binds to it, and the enzyme PLC gamma comes and binds to LAT. Now, once PLC gamma comes and binds to LAT, the PLC gamma is further activated by tyrosine phosphorylation mediated by a kinase known as TEC kinase. You can see ITK. So this TEC kinase, that is how it is pronounced. So PLC gamma is phosphorylated by TEC kinase. PLC gamma breaks down PIP2, thereby releasing IP3. Where is IP3? Thereby the IP3 is not shown here. So PLC gamma breaks down PIP2, releasing IP3, which induces the release of calcium and the activation of nuclear factor AT via calcineurin activation. And the DAC created as a in the process, because PIP2 is broken down by PLC gamma into IP3 and DAC. The DAC created by this hydrolysis interacts with a protein kinase C called as PKC theta, which further activates nuclear factor kappa B. And phosphorylated LAT also activates another signaling cascade. It activates GRB2, which binds to SOS. And finally, the RAS pathway is activated. The moment the RAS pathway is activated, AP1, the transcription factor, is activated, which functions to signal cytokine secretion and to the passage of the signals that recognize the actin cytoskeleton. So in a nutshell, once more I'm repeating the signaling cascade stepwise. The moment TCR CD3 complex is activated, the LCK, which is phosphorylated, which had remained phosphorylated and was inhibited, that inhibitory phosphate is removed by CD45 phosphatase. LCK is phosphorylated. It activates the phosphate residues of the ITAMs. So CD3 is activated. It recruits ZAP70. ZAP70 is phosphorylated. It then activates the LAT adapter protein. Once the LAT is phosphorylated at multiple residues, it then recruits adapter protein and enzymes to it. Two important adapter protein are the GAD and SLP76, and one important enzyme is the PLC gamma. PLC gamma then breaks down, meanwhile TEC kinase phosphorylase PLC gamma. PLC gamma breaks down PIP2, releasing IP3 and DAG. IP3 brings about the release of calcium, intracellular calcium, and via activation of calcineurin, and it finally activates nuclear factor 80. Meanwhile, DAG associates with a protein kinase C, theta type, which then activates nuclear factor kappa B. So this is occurring on one hand, while simultaneously GRB2 is recruited to the LAT molecule. GRB2 activates SOS, which further activates the RAS pathway, which finally results in the activation of the new transcription factor AP1. The moment the AP1 transcription factor is activated, AP1 results in production of the cytokine secretion, and it also facilitates the passage of the signals that recognize the actin cytoskeleton. So this is a nutshell, the signaling process that takes place the moment the TCR CD3, the TCR recognizes the antigen, and on antigen recognition, the signal passes to CD3. Meanwhile, CD4 also simultaneously recognizes the MAC class 2 molecule. So this is something we discussed. That is the same picture. So you can see CD45. This is a very simplified picture. So CD45, LCK activation, ITAMs of CD3 activated, ZAP70 activated. You can see ZAP70 is phosphorylating multiple sites at LAT. PLC gamma is meanwhile activated. PLC gamma breaks down PIP2 into IP3 and DAG. So you can see the breakdown. DAG interacts with PKC to form PKC theta. Meanwhile, the GRB2 associates with LAT to start the RAS-RAF pathway. So this is in a nutshell the signaling cascades operative in T cells, within T cells, once the T cell receptor CD3, CD4 complex is activated. So today we'll stop our lecture here.